So I am representing Island Energy here. I don't work for Island Energy. Island Energy is part of a group, and it's Island's Energy Group, which is with Guernsey and the Isle of Man. I'm a part of the sustainability team, so accounting is fortunately a thing of the past for me. And yeah, Alex Parslow. So I don't have any relation to the Parslow divorce lawyers here. So if you have any problems with your spouse, please don't come to me. So I'm going to talk through our intentions, the context behind the business and what we're after, the targets that we've set ourselves, the future of gas, the fact that we are not just a gas business. A lot of people assume that we are, but we're not, and a conclusion for you. I'm going to race through it as quickly as I can. So the intention, like a lot of people have said, the intention is cooperation. We don't have all the answers. We could hypothetically meet all the energy needs of the island, but that's not what we're going for. The solution is going to be a mix of what we can provide and what other people can provide. It is going to be decarbonisation. It's the opinion of the business that we do have to reach net zero by 2050. We think it's affordable. We think it's about achievable with our current technologies, but we know that in the future we are investigating and investing in others, and hopefully we can either deliver net zero or even carbon negative. Part of the way that we're going to do it is by reducing or avoiding the load on the electricity grid. We do sell electricity. We know that they are having to spend a lot of money at Jersey Electricity to increase the load and increase the capacity. If we can make that easier, that will reduce the taxes on you, and it will reduce the effort that's having to be put in, reduce roads being dug up and so on. What we want is to allow consumer choice. So when we have one monopoly effectively on the island, on each island, we want to be able to give domestic properties, but particularly commercial properties and industrial sites, choice. And what we want to do in partnership with the government and with other businesses, we want to offer a package. So it could be gas, it could be electricity, it could be a hybrid. We want to offer efficiency products to bring that load down. What we want is to turn up to you and say, what are your needs? It may not be gas for everyone. It may not be oil for everyone. It may not be electricity. We should be able to meet your needs no matter what they are. The context. We are celebrating our birthday. 175 years as a business on the island. The top right of that screen shows the first gasworks in Jersey, which is from 1831. The first gas light was in 1831. The company was set up. On the island, we got fed up of people from Westminster telling us what to do, so we started our own business, 1850. It was primarily around lamp lighters, so it was providing us street lamps. I had a little look around in my lunch break. You've got a lamplighter pub right behind. I spent a lot of time when I was doing my accountancy course there not studying. And we've got some lovely old gas lamps outside the Société outside, actually, that have been converted to electricity, which I love that combination of the old technology and the new. We're very proud of what we did during the occupation. In recognition, we've come up to 80 years. We managed to deceive the occupying authorities into thinking that we had less supplies than we actually did. And that meant that we were able to keep some soup kitchens going on over the winter of 1944 and 1945 that we otherwise wouldn't have been doing. We changed from, some of you will probably remember that it used to be called town gas. So we changed from town gas to butane originally in the 1960s. We were the second place in the British Isles to have a butane plant. The first was Guernsey. Then we changed from that into propane and propane air mix, which is sometimes called synthetic natural gas in the 1970s. About 1977, we finished that program. We formed a group in the 1990s with Guernsey and the Isle of Man. We rebranded it a few years ago to align with the new business direction. So we wanted to change from just being a gas company. We didn't do a great job of that rebrand. So every time I answer the phone, I say, blah, 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 yes, the gas company. And what's happening next week is very exciting, that we're very proud of, is that we're trialing bio LPG. So we're going to make a big deal about it. You're going to read about it a lot in the news. Effectively, what that's going to mean is that we don't need to change any of the infrastructure. We can start blending in bio LPG and delivering emission savings from day one. So our targets. What you can see on the top right is the emissions forecast for the gas that we sell up to 2050. The target is the black dotted line. We're not going to quite make it based on current technologies, but we think we can get a hell of a long way there. We're going for 23% reduction by 2030 based on the 2021 baseline. Again, we really believe that we can get there. We're actually ahead of target with the efforts that we've already been putting in. And by our 200th birthday in 2050, we're going to have a 90% reduction. Just on the bottom right, just to say, as I said, the current technology is insufficient and we do get audited on an annual basis. Right, what we all want to talk about is phase 4 and phase 5 and 6. So LPG, why did we choose bio-LPG? Why are we choosing LPG in the first place? The potential for a biomethane or anaerobic digester, hydrogen, and the latest kid on the block, which is RDME. So I'm going to discuss all these one by one. So why LPG? In the UK, in Europe, and around the world, they use natural gas, which is so-called because it occurs naturally. It's easy to get. It's not because it's in any way good. We use LPG because it's far easier to transport and to store. So to transport natural gas, you have to compress it to incredibly high levels or super cool it, basically. LPG doesn't have that problem. You can store it in any old cylinder like you can see here. It's actually one of ours in Jersey. I've got some examples about energy density as well. So in the UK, the largest battery system that they have costs £90 million. It's only brought online in the last few years, and that can only contain less than 2% of just our storage vessels down at La Collette. So something that cost us maybe a tenth of what it costs to store 2%. And what 20 million kilowatt hours actually means is that we can meet the energy demands of the entire island for about 25 days. So we don't need to worry about, you know, a lack of supply coming through from France. We have a degree of independence already. We do have to ship it in. It's not like we're generating on island, but it just means if things do go terribly wrong in terms of electricity supply, we have it on site. LPG makes a lot of sense for isolated communities because of the ease of transport. We don't need to have a mass transmission network. A lot of you might have heard of the saying about there's no transition without transmission. We can remove that from the equation. We can have on-site generation of energy. And as I already said, it can be sold neat, which is, it comes in these cylinders, or you have mini bulk tanks, which are just larger containers, or you can sell it through the mains as an LPG air mix. So bio-LPG, that's today's or next week's solution. It's the technology that already exists. It will deliver 80% emission saving. It has no change to infrastructure, so there are no upfront, no capital costs whatsoever. It comes from about 40% waste, 40% rapeseed oil, and that will change depending on your supplier and where they get their mix. And as I said, we're doing a trial this month. It is actually next week. So I really think you should be reading the news. Well, if it goes well, we'll let you know. In terms of cost of bio-LPG, which is why we're all here, we don't know exactly. What we're going to try and do is blend it in gradually. So we might be offering out people a tariff which is based on maybe a 20% blend, 50% blend, down the line 100%. What we don't want to do is throw an enormous increase in OPEX to people from day one. We'll gradually increase, and hopefully we don't benefit from the economies of scale, but as the technology develops, we can keep our costs down. This one, I didn't know whether to include this slide. I think it's just beneficial to explain it. In accounting, we have something called an expectations gap, and this is a similar idea. A lot of people don't fully understand how mass balance and RGGOs, which is renewable gas guarantees of origin, how that process actually works. The reason that we can blend in gas from day one is because it's not necessarily going to be those exact molecules that you will be using. So when a green gas producer generates or creates 1 kilowatt hour of gas, they are given a certificate. The gas itself is just going to go into the mains network. It's going to go into the pipes. Enon's going to be able to use it. It'll be the closest person to them who uses it will get that gas. The benefit of the system, so of these certificates, is that if I inject that gas into the network and your business wants to have a green gas tariff, effectively I will transfer the certificate to you, not the molecules. So it's a bookkeeping exercise basically. For an accountant like me, it's very exciting, and I can see from your faces you're not accountants. But the issue with that is a lack of trust from the public. It sounds like we're offsetting. We're not offsetting. It's exactly the same process the electricity companies all across the planet use, and it really makes sense because it means you can optimize where you spend your money and how your money is spent. But there is a lack of trust. How do you address that lack of trust? It's to generate the gas on island, so we can guarantee that the gas that you consume is green gas. And the way we do that is something called an anaerobic digester, or an AD plant. So we are not an AD plant builder, but our owners own the largest AD plant producer in the UK, which is Biogen, and this is one of their plants. It's a technology that exists. It's out there. It can deliver carbon negative emissions, so not carbon neutral, not net zero, but carbon negative emissions. And I think most importantly for this speech, it delivers a circular economy. It keeps money on island, and especially in rural economies, and so much of our island comes from Jersey Royals and the dairy. It keeps money in that economy. Now, I'm going to give you a diagram. Anyone who knows about AD plants is going to think this is the worst oversimplification that they've ever come across. I used to be a primary school teacher. My style hasn't changed too much from when I used to do that. Make no apologies. But effectively, the farms at the moment, they'll take that organic waste, that agricultural waste, they'll fling it back over the fields at the end of the growing season. You might know it as muck spreading. I grew up on a farm. The smell, I love the smell, but a lot of people don't. They discard that over the fields. It's a fantastic fertilizer. It makes the entire island smell. But the problem is the waste gases from that go up into the atmosphere, particularly methane. It degrades very quickly, but the problem is that it reacts in the ozone layer to create water vapor and more carbon dioxide, both of which lead to greater global warming. So the concept behind this is if you take all that waste, you put it into a sealed container and you remove oxygen from the equation and you churn it all up together, it separates into a liquid, basically a slurry, which is called digestate, and it separates into two gases which combined are called biogas. So I've been very careful not to refer to anything as biogas because it is a particular thing. At that point, that gas can either be combusted and you can generate electricity from it, and something called a CHP. A CHP is effectively a small power station. I'm going to talk about CHPs a bit later. So you can either use that to generate electricity and heat immediately and put it into the grid. You can use it to heat swimming pools or whatever you might need it to do. Or you can separate out the carbon dioxide and the biomethane at that stage. The beauty of doing that is that you can store that CO2, or you can use it to carbonate your drinks. And then that biomethane that's left, you can put straight into the gas grid. As I said, we use LPG on the island. About 10, 15 years ago, they did a study in Jersey about the viability of an AD plant, and they said no, because you can't mix methane and LPG. Since that has happened, ideas have sort of changed in the gas industry. We do think you can blend them to a degree. So we're now looking at it again as an option. That digestate, it doesn't smell. So what we can do is we can give that back to the farmers. It is, again, a fantastic fertilizer. You have to be very careful about where and when you use it, especially around water sources. But that can be given back to the farmers to spread out over their fields however they wish. If you really wanted to, you could take the CHP, the heat from the CHP, and put that through the digestate, and that'll dry it into a sort of fiber. And that works perfectly in existing muck spreading technology. So again, lower capex for the farmers, reduces the amount of fertilizer they need to import. So if any of you are farmers, you'll know that fertilizer is often one of your biggest expenses. You think about the knock-on impact. Well, if farmers can reduce their prices, it will encourage export. It will lower the price of food for you guys. it benefits the economy, and it keeps a lot of farmers in business. So Jersey is still doing very well, but you may know that the agricultural sector in Guernsey has been decimated over the last few decades, and a big part of that is because of the cost of importing fertilizer and the use of heat in glass houses. Again, CHP will provide that heat for free. Now, carbon negative emissions, it sounded too good to be true. Again, I've come up with a primary school level explanation. How does it work? It's something called biogenic emissions. So the crop each season, as the crop develops, it absorbs CO2 and it turns that CO2 into energy, and it uses it to grow. At the end of that life cycle, it decomposes and it releases the exact same amount of CO2 that it absorbed over its life. The next year, the spring, the next batch of crops, as they grow, they absorb the same CO2 again. So the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere doesn't change. So the global warming impact is nil. When you add an AD plant into the equation, you can capture that CO2, as I said earlier. Therefore, you can, if you store it, you bury it at the bottom of the ocean, you store it, the next batch of growth absorbs more CO2 than would have been released. So you can withdraw CO2 from the atmosphere. And Paul, I saw you've got a lovely badge saying I love CO2, so we might clash a little bit on that one, but that's okay. Sorry? You got the badge saying I love CO2.
I do. I'd like to see more of it. Yeah.
Oh, well, good. Well, go to the bottom of the ocean, there's plenty of it there.
Yeah, only I haven't got the 22 film that Ed Miliband's got to bury it. That's all.
Oh, exactly. Well,
and I haven't got the money they wasted in America trying to do that.
Yeah. Well, the other thing just to say is that I should have said at the start already, we are a privately owned business. So we don't have the backing of any governments or states. Everything that we're doing is off our own back, and that's how it's always been. Now, the negatives of an AD plant, if it's such a good idea, why hasn't it happened yet? It does require extensive capital cost. So for the states of Jersey, it's comparatively easy. For us as a private business, we need to access that capital that we currently don't have. So I don't have the exact numbers because it would have to be bespoke to the island, but you're looking at maybe £5-6 million for one site. In the UK, without access to something called the Green Gas Support Scheme, it just wouldn't be feasible for any AD plants to exist. In Jersey, again, we don't have that access. There are concerns about smell, noise, and road traffic. The first two I don't really think are too valid. I've been on plenty of AD plants, they don't smell. And if anything, if you didn't have them, you'd have muck spreading, and muck spreading does smell. So you can actually remove smell from the equation. Noise, you'll get a hum. It's a large plant. There will be some noises when they have to flare off excess gas from time to time. You might get a sort of quiet booming sound. It's really, again, it's nothing to worry about, but it does exist. Road traffic really is the concern. So road traffic, you'd have to be bringing in all of the agricultural waste for the island every day. So you're going to have lorries coming in around the clock, basically. That would be the concern. You'd have to be very, very clever about where you put it in terms of road access, and you kind of have to be as remote as possible to avoid disruption to people, but close enough to where the electricity and energy is required. So that, again, that's the challenge. And finally, the most obvious one is that we don't have enough agricultural output on the island to meet all of our energy needs with an AD plant. What often happens is that they sort of get high on their own supply, so it might just be more of a way to dispose of waste, and they use that heat, they use that electricity for their own consumption. So maybe it could be on a farm. In Jersey, you have an excellent sewage treatment works that I think was built the last few years. They have the exact same process, but it's with wastewater. So again, have an AD plant, and they have to use all the electricity and heat that they produce for their own processes. But the idea is that it doesn't then draw from the grid. Hydrogen. There's been a lot of talk about hydrogen. We did look into it. The conclusion was that it's not really worth our time at this stage. It does have very questionable emissions credentials. So there's different colours of hydrogen. You may have heard it doesn't have anything to do with the actual hydrogen itself, but it's how environmentally friendly it is. So green hydrogen is all we'd ever be interested in. and there frankly isn't the renewable electricity capacity to generate anywhere near enough of the stuff for us to use. Because of the size of the molecule, it's far smaller than the molecules we currently deal with. It will require every single bit of pipework, every single appliance on the island to be changed to fit hydrogen. For us as a private business, that's cost prohibitive, basically. It's a non-starter. There are studies going on, so they've got a hydrogen village in Wales, I think, where they have an isolated network and they're trialing that on hydrogen. So we are waiting to see how that is going to develop. And as I said, it's been considered, but there's no further action being taken. I do see a future for hydrogen, but this is my opinion. This isn't the organisation's opinion. I don't think it's going to be in energy, electricity production. I think it might make more sense in shipping, for example. Right, next one. And as I said, this is the new technology. This has only very recently emerged. So RDME has only come out as a viable alternative in the last 5 years or so. Again, it requires no change in infrastructure. It's very similar to LPG. So LPG is mostly propane and butane. This is chemically very, very similar. It means that you can just add it into LPG and you can deliver savings from day one. The exciting thing for us is that it's possible to develop from an AD plant. An AD plant produces biomethane. We use propane and butane. RDME could be a kind of halfway house where we produce the kind of gas that we currently use on island, which is very exciting for everyone. Right. Yeah, I do have time. I don't want to take any questions now. As I said, I was a teacher. I don't have any gold stars or high fives. At the end of it, if you write it down, I'll come back to you. So not just gas. We aren't just a gas distribution business. We do have a lot of time focusing on reducing the load that the electricity company has to take up. You've got microgrids, thermal storage, and hybrid energy systems. This here is a thermal battery. Microgrid. So the really interesting nuclear speaker earlier did mention about something where you can produce heat and electricity at the same time. I mentioned it earlier with a CHP. That's exactly what these are. It's called combined heat and power units. That is effectively a small power station, a small gas power station that you can have in a hotel or a prison or a school, a leisure centre and so on. The point is that they produce about 40 units, let's say, of electricity and maybe 60 of heat. So they produce an incredible amount of heat that you then want to use. So you want it to be somewhere where you have a lot of requirements for heat, which is why it works well with anyone that has swimming pools. There's a residential area in Guernsey that's very, very affluent. And what they wanted to do was install swimming pools, and the local electricity provider said, no, there's no load for it. Well, we could do that for you. We could have a kind of microgrid where you have enough electricity for all of your swimming pools. The beauty of that is that you tend to want heat in your house in the winter and you want swimming pools in the summer. So you can use that heat very, very cleverly. It is scalable and it comes with fuel choice. We are selling it with gas in mind, but it doesn't need to. The beauty of them is you can run it off wood pellets if you really wanted to. It just depends on the technology that you use. What excites us is the idea of having a CHP and a bio LPG combination. It's scalable. You could, if you wanted to, you could buy a micro CHP and you could just run your house off it. If you wanted to run the entire island off it, you could just have a massive CHP, or you could have multiple working in sequence. We currently have 8 on the island. These ones are in the Royal Yacht. So if you've stayed at the Royal Yachts, you've used electricity in there, you're actually using Jersey energy electricity, island energy electricity. Thermal batteries. This is one of these ones where we want to kind of reduce load rather than avoiding it. So many of you will probably have heard about electricity batteries you can attach to your house. So I looked into having a Tesla Powerwall at mine, but they came back and they said the quote was nearly 10 grand. I'm about to get married. Do you think I have 10 grand to spend on that my fiance wouldn't want to be spending on something else? It wasn't a long conversation. The beauty of this is that it's a fraction of that. So a thermal battery would be £2,500 maybe. What it does is it replaces a hot water cylinder. It uses technology which is called phase change materials. Any of you who used to have hand warmers where you could crack it and then it hits your hand, it's the exact same idea but on a slightly larger scale. So it stores energy in the form of heat, and then when you need to have hot water, it will give it to you on demand. So what the benefits to the island, where we have a lot of houses where space is a real constraint of ours, and my kitchen is absolutely tiny, and about 20% of my kitchen is taken up with a hot water cylinder. If I could remove that, and if I could put in a thermal battery, that would take up 25% of that space, and it would deliver me efficiency savings from day one as well. Again, so I've got a phrase at the bottom there, it's a just transition. A lot of the things we've talked about today are really, really exciting, but where it's kind of isn't hitting home is in social housing. It's in people who don't have the spare capital to spend on these things. This is the sort of technology that we find really exciting because it benefits everyone. It benefits the people in the Jersey electricity, it benefits the people who might not be too interested in the environmental perspective, but they're really interested in the cost savings. The thing that we're doing very, very ambitiously in the Isle of Man is to do with hybrid. So hybrids, heat pumps, for example, CHP solar combinations. So a heat pump is very topical and they are excellent, but for a lot of people, they just don't make sense. So depending on the size of your house or the build quality of your house, a heat pump just won't deliver the efficiency needs that you're being sold it would. So what we can do is sell a bit of intelligent technology, which is effectively, very basically, it's a gas boiler and a heat pump, and you split the roles of heating your house between the two of them. So maybe in the summer, so what this one is showing you, so Alpha E-Tech is our partner in the Isle of Man. In the summer, whilst temperatures are warmer, you're purely running on the heat pump. As it gets colder, you have a bit of 50-50, and when it gets very cold, which doesn't apply to us so much in Jersey, but then it runs purely on the boiler because the efficiency of the heat pump just doesn't really work at that sort of temperature. And then solar and CHP, so hybrid heat pump really works for domestic customers. Solar and CHP combination, and again, CHP is that miniature power station, that really works for our commercial customers. So you can cover your entire roof in solar panels. And again, you have the same sort of split role. So you might have the CHP meeting your base load requirements, and then a combination of solar and battery storage to make up the rest. So in summary, we might not be able to produce all the energy needs of the island, but it certainly makes sense in terms of what to do with the agricultural waste that is currently out there. I think there was a very good saying I heard is, it's not, waste isn't the future of gas, gas is the future of waste. So if you've got it there, it's currently being left on the fields to rot, why not make use of it and let's generate at least something on island. We want to be part of a diverse energy mix. So again, I didn't think when I was coming into this conference that people were going to be talking about having a massive gas-powered station on the entire island. I don't think anybody at the Island Energy's ever thought about having this. But we're just thinking more about being in partnership with lots of other technologies and lots of other businesses. And it delivers a circular economy. So again, a lot of guys have come in here today and said about keeping money and jobs on island. This would deliver it very, very easily, especially when you're talking about an AD plant. What we want to do is support our rural economy because we all benefit from it. And it keeps those pounds on island. And I think that was it. All right, thank you very much.
I know you have to run. There's time for any questions?
I've got time for questions, yeah.
Okay, go ahead. I'll turn to the panel first.
Let's show it. You go.
You talked about bio-LPG.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned 40% rapeseed.
Yeah.
Yeah. You understand the land use of rapeseed that you're using up now to create energy.
Yes.
It's enormous.
Yeah.
And it has huge impacts internationally, never mind nationally. And so my question is, you then talked about how gradually, I mean, some of your things are great, how gradually you have to ease in the new biofuel. Because why not ease them in straight away? What's the cost price difference?
The way that it's calculated is there's something called a premium. So when you import gas onto the island, you have to pay a premium for it. The premium for bio-LPG is roughly double that of regular LPG, twice as much. So that doesn't necessarily result in twice the price for electricity that the consumer will pay, because that's not the only way that we calculate the price of our tariffs. But we are trying to challenge existing legislative bodies, let's say, who are instilling a very high price to import the stuff.
Yeah.
So we think it'll be maybe 20%, but we don't know until we've completed the trial for a certain blend. 100% blend, we're not actually looking at offering that out yet.
No. Well, whether you offer it or not, the base thing is it would double the price.
Well, it would double the price of that component of what goes into the overall price.
Electricity, no, I accept that.
Yeah.
Totally, because that's only one of the ingredients. Totally accept that.
Yeah.
Okay. Hydrogen, I agree with you, by the way. Totally, so no argument there. Heat pumps, you would agree, wouldn't you, that most of the houses in Jersey are not suitable for heat pumps?
I think so, yeah.
Because you need to, for every 10 radiators you've got now, you'd have to add 12 to get the same heat out. Because it's only a 40C as opposed to 73 degrees C. Normally for a central heating system. That's how bad that is. But we agree anyway on that.
We do, yeah. So a hybrid system is really what we're arguing.
I agree with that. Now, you then talked about the heat battery in effect.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. I don't know about it. And how much storage? Because you compare it to a Tesla battery. Now, a Tesla battery is about 10 kilowatt hours.
Yeah.
And it's about 10,000 quid.
Yeah.
So it's 1,000 quid a kilowatt hour.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How much? And you said this is about a quarter of the price.
Yeah.
So it's about 2,500. How many kilowatt hours is it?
I don't know. So so we don't produce those ourselves. So there's a company called Sunamp.
What we're looking at here, would you accept? Leaving aside the whole question, we're not here to discuss this. But leaving aside the whole question, we're looking at far more expensive ways of operating, and we're looking at having to fit our world around that, rather than that world fit around us. So that we can sense that we want power now, give it to us now. There's a lot of messing about goes on in this green world, that is really turns the customer and supplier on the head. You have to fit around that. But interesting talk. And I don't mind the LPG. I think that's great. One of the great things that come out of it, and I'll finish with this, is actually you could provide a backup storage. That's viable.
Yeah.
So on that one, I'm going to give you a 10 out of 10.
Okay. Hi Alex, you covered quite a lot of ground.
Yeah, sorry, I had to race through everything there, but
I managed to follow everything. On the bio, I should, I guess, show my hand that I'm normally dead set against any form of biomass energy or electricity production. But that is mainly from the UK large economy perspective, and the scheme that I'm using the word scheme very carefully. The scheme that I'm familiar with is the biomass plant that was installed at Drax power station in England. So for everyone's information, Drax was a coal-fired power station, 4 gigawatts. It was Britain's largest power station. And then it got greenified through the idea that we'll import wood chips from the USA.
From the other side of the USA.
And so the green plan was they're cutting down bottomwood forest in Louisiana, southern United States. So they're cutting down virgin forest with a power saw powered by liquid fuel. They get the wood, they take it to a wood chip plant somewhere on the coast, and they convert this virgin forest into wood chips. It gets loaded onto a wood chip carrier that gets taken to Britain and then transported by steel trains to Drax. And they burn that in one of the Drax furnaces and try to pretend that this is a green process.
37,000 tonnes of wood pellets a day.
Yeah. So the main question I would have for you, 47 what was envisaged is if you're going to make LPG from biomass on island,
Yeah.
what would be the feedstock? And you did indicate that there would be insufficient feedstock on island, which means you then have to go off island and perhaps start importing, virgin woodland from the USA. So the main question is, what percent could you produce on island?
Well, there's a few parts to that before I get to that. So first of all, the biomass they're using in Drax would be very, very different to the sort of stuff that we'd use in our gases. Totally different product. But the point about the growing your own fuel is a very valid one. So there was a study into how much we could grow on island, and it's not very much. So if you think that where we get most of our feedstock, so that would be for biomethane rather than for bio-LPG, for our biomethane feedstock would mostly come from waste. So Jersey is very fortunate that we have a huge potato farming industry, and for about 3 months of the year, we have an incredible amount of potato waste, and potato waste is a fantastic feedstock for it. The other thing that we have a lot of is dairy cows, and the dairy manure we could use throughout the year. There is a bit of seasonality, but we could use that as well to generate it. The point that we really want to make is really, it's not that we could produce everything we want to use on island. Far from it. We don't have enough agricultural capacity to generate the gas that we'd want on island. The point is, what we do create, what we do have, we're not doing enough with. So what we're kind of putting forward is a proposal that we have a power station that will at least get something from it, rather than just letting it go up into the atmosphere. There was a statistic that I think it was, I don't want to say because I'm going to get it wrong, but it wasn't very much is the answer.
Okay, thank you. Other questions?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm concerned about what has essentially been glossed over, but described as the gas grid.
Yeah.
Now, we have a history of gas exploits in Jersey, which includes 2 major fires down at Gas Place, destroying the gas holders down there, and only up the road, fairly recently, a gas explosion, which killed a number of entirely innocent local citizens. You're dealing with a major commodity. You appear to be insinuating that we need a gas grid. And I would say to you, that's actually the last thing we need. This is an explosive substance. Apart from anything else, it needs maintenance. And every time that is required, that causes a huge traffic incident, because it's not only water pipes we're having to put in, it's not only substituting freshwater pipes with the sewage system and the electricity. Gas is an extra component that is costing either the taxpayer or the consumer or the energy company extra. I wonder why we actually pursue this. I am absolutely on board for your farming approach, but we're talking about a dozen dairy farms left who could provide the methane required, and you just indicated potatoes part of the year, not the rest of the year. This is a dangerous operation, albeit we know it's a cheap one. May explain a few things. Surely we should be just kicking this into touch and go, it's costing too much. It upsets people's ability to, because it's like.
I think sorry. I think I know where you're getting at.
Could you just explain how you visualise the gas grid and where's it going to go?
Well, I suppose the first point is it's not just gas that we can sell. So the AD plant, as I said, doesn't need to put gas into the gas grid. You can combust that biogas at the point of generation and use electricity from it instead. So what we're proposing is not just that you have a grid, but also you can use gas to generate electricity and use the electricity instead into the wider grid. Okay? I can't talk about it much more because apart from anything else, I'm an accountant, so I don't want to talk about engineering too much apart from anything else. Yeah, yes.
Well, you said, I may have, you said the gas wouldn't smell. How would you know if there was a gas leak?
Okay, so
Because all these people have lost their lives recently and they smell the gas, but
I'll go back.
you'd want to smell the gas for safety, surely.
what wouldn't smell is the digestate. The digestate is the fertilizer. The gas would still smell, but we also add in a chemical into the gas to give it that smell that you all know of anyway. So the point what I was making there was the fertilizer doesn't smell. So when you flick out mud onto the fields, you don't get that smell of it. That was the point that I was getting across. Okay. Yeah.
In Jersey, quite a lot of the country properties and maybe large properties and less large properties are using central heating oil.
Yeah.
Am I right in thinking that this might be a solution that instead of having an oil tank, you might have a gas pipe tank that you sometimes see in France?
Yes, which already exists. So that's the advantage. So a lot of people think of gas and electricity as competitors. I actually think that the main competitor of gas, of LPG, is oil, because it means that you don't have to have the grid connecting to your house. You have something literally attached to the side of your house that you get the power from. So that is exactly the point. It's the home energy storage system.
And presumably you could use that gas stored in your big tank at home to generate electricity if you like.
Yes, exactly. So that's the micro CHP, and they do cost 10 grand or whatever it might be. But again, you could do it at home as well. So yes, I don't think we sell CHPs on the island, but in terms of we're talking about decades in the future, then yes, you absolutely could. And that was something else that I can say is that 40% of the houses on the island do have oil. Just switching them all over to LPG would reduce the island's emissions by 16%. So that is before we add in bio-LPG. So LPG has that capability from day one.
And cost comparisons?
That's where the reason why they're on oil. I am an accountant. The reason why they're not on gas is because oil is far cheaper, and we can't compete with that. So I don't know exactly what the tariffs are for oil on the islands, but it's substantially cheaper. Yes.
You just follow on in some ways from what Guy was saying. There's two issues here. One is about public trust.
Yeah.
Because there's so many outages from gas. Because the pipe work that we've got in Jersey is rather old. And have you factored in, about the maintenance and the replacement and of our pipe work?
Yeah. So where I see the future going is these microgrids. So what we want to do is reduce the amount of pipe work that's even in the ground in the first place. So if you had a new building development of a small housing estate, rather than having pipes coming from the main gas generation plant, if you just had a small gas-powered electricity plant, then you would remove outages from the equation. Really, you have on-site consistent generation that is then managed by the company. You don't have to worry about blackouts, for example. For the mains that's already in place and people who are connected to gas, again, I'm not an engineer. I can't comment on too much on what's going on, but I know they're being really ambitious, and I think that they've replaced more of the old pipe work than they have in the last 10 years or something in the last 3 months. So they're spending a lot of money on it. The problem that we had is that a lot of the old gas, and this is getting into engineering, and this is just what I've picked up from conversations with my colleagues, a lot of the old gas pipe is expensive to replace, and we are doing it, but it's the issue that we're having is really manpower. So the same with everybody else, we just don't have the manpower in islands to deliver what we really want to. That's it. So they are working on it, but yes.
Yeah, it's really just to add a comment to ask this gentleman's concerns about safety, or a little bit of trivia about about methane. Is that below 1%, if there's an ignition source, if below 1% methane in air, it does nothing. Between 1 and 5% of methane in air, it is explosive. And above 5%, it either does nothing or it will burn. But it's that 1 to 5% mix of methane in air that is potentially lethal.
But again, I'm not an engineer, and also there is an ongoing legal case, so I can't comment on anything on that. Okay. So any questions who are related to that, please.
Not related to that. Well, didn't they put garlic in when I was a kid? They used to have a quite strong smell. My garlic smell. I know they used to put in the gas when I was a kid. But anyway,
Interesting.
That was the old.
great presentation.
Yeah.
But I would say it's a shame about the CO2 propaganda. The CO2 being bad. CO2 is green. It greens the planet. It's good. The methane, I think, I mean, you can correct me, I have scientists here, is less than 2%, and as you said, it's oxidized in the atmosphere, it's transient, it's not even worth mentioning. I mean, it's obviously good to use it for fuel, that's an excellent idea. And of course, some warming is beneficial, it saves lives, as all the studies, endless studies have shown. The most recent I read was from the Lancet, saying that 10 to 20 times more people die from cold than from heat. And it depends where you are, even in Europe or where it doesn't get that cold. So all this, and anyway, the warming from CO2, the CO2 is saturated. I mean, we can get, sorry, I don't want to go off track, but it's a shame. I feel it's let down by that because people see that and they switch off and they say.
Well, I would challenge you on that. I think the opposite is true. I think you're probably in the minority of people who think that CO2 is not an issue.
That's a fact.
No, you're correct, it's the minority,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean it's right. That's a different question.
Not the
However, no, that's because science isn't a vote.
And I think you have a separate,
You know,
you have a separate talk on this.
we're
anyway.
gonna that's
Yeah,
not the
so-
purpose of today's talk. So
Yeah.
we're getting off.
Come
So
back
I'd like to
and,
thank
yeah.
you. No. No, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
And safe travels.